So I want to start off with a visual aid, because I love visual aids. And this one particularly is the piece of artwork that has stuck with me throughout my life more than any other piece of art. I've never seen something that actually kept me awake at night thinking about it, and I would come and revisit it during the day, just about what it meant to me. And so I wanted to share that all with you, because this artwork has influenced me more than you can say, and it's kind of just the basis for this whole speech. So I'm going to show it right now. Okay. You guys see it? And then, ha, polite laugh. No? Okay. I didn't make it, so if you guys hate it, that's okay. I want to walk you through it. So at the beginning, you have a guy who says, "What's this?" And he finds a little flag, and the flag says Team A on it. And then another guy walks by, and he's waving, he says, "Hi," and he has a flag that says Team B. And then the guy says, "Wow, bleep that guy." And the reason this sticks with me, right, is not just because it's a little bit of a fun, silly joke, but because it made me think about how many different things are there in our lives that we build up these teams, we build up these connections to other people that then can actually divide us from others. You have something that I believe was made to give us community and separates you. Now, of course, that's more of a sports analogy, but I think it's a lot more than that. Today, I would promise you that probably even this very day, you've been asked to choose something that you didn't even realize. So we often find ourselves in this situation. I was trying to find a picture that you'll see of choosing a side. For whatever reason, the stock image has a man named Robert in the middle, ruining the whole Star Wars thing. So pretend it was cool. But how many times have you been Robert, having to choose a side? And at first you're thinking, okay, this doesn't make sense. I've never had to choose between the light and the dark side. This is silly. I like Star Trek. But there you go. You just made a choice. I like Star Trek. You've identified yourself, and you put yourself in a group. If you say, I like Star Wars and I don't like Star Trek, then you put yourself in a group. If you say, I'm actually too cool for either of those things, there you go, third group. And you keep finding yourself in these groups that appear. And something about finding somebody else who's in your group. If you're like, you know what? I don't really care for this whole Star Wars thing. And then you find someone else who's like, you know what? I don't really care for this Star Wars thing. And you guys are like, we should hang out. It's like, yeah, we should. You feel this connection to somebody. You don't know anything about them besides this one identifier that you guys have chosen to share. And I feel like that's been warped in some terrible ways to use things. I mean, marketing will do that for you. If you end up being a giant Taco Bell fan from all the ads you see at the Super Bowl, then maybe you don't want to go to Del Taco anymore, and you'll use all your cheap taco money for their specific establishment instead of using it anywhere else. And so it's very driven now. This type of psychology has been harnessed by people. And so I want to, number one, make you aware of it, make you aware of why it exists, and also how we are supposed to react with this knowledge as Christians. And I'm going to break it down in a way that's personal to me. Why personal to me? Isn't that a bit selfish? If I made it personal to all of you, we'd be here all night. So I'm going to spare you some time, and I'm going to break it down the way that my degree works. So I'm going to talk about it from the biology angle, because my major is biology. I'm going to break it down from the biblical angle, because I have a Bible minor. And then I'm going to break it down from the theater angle, which you might think, how does that work? And that's the hook. There you go. So I'm going to start with the biological angle, okay? So back in the good old days, when we were all hunters and gatherers, once upon a time, if you were a hunter and a gatherer, you'd go out and you'd gather some berries. And then maybe you'd go out and you'd hunt for some food. There you go, and that's a full day's work, right? You got your food, you got your berries, and you're done. But then if you find someone who's like, hey, I'm really good at hunting, and you're like, well, I actually kind of prefer gathering, then the two of you can work together, and you guys can form a tribe. Now, that's a word we're going to hear a lot tonight, or you probably heard a million times if you've ever had Rex Gurney as your professor. So, by starting their own tribe, they're able to now be more efficient. So now you have one person who goes off and does all the gathering, takes them half a day. One guy who goes off and does all the hunting, takes them half a day. They come back, they pull their supplies, and they're like, this works out well. But now, a problem. What if your group has your own territory, and their group has their territory, and you guys don't have enough people to really share all the resources? What if a fight breaks out? Because, we've never gotten in fights or been violent ever as a human race. Right. No, but if that happens, of course you would be geared towards sticking with your team. If you guys work together as a team and you stick up for those around you instead of just being like, oh, guess Gary was too weak. He's gone now. Goodbye. If you stick up for the people on your team, then you can have a more functioning tribe. Your tribe can be successful, and you can keep your territory and excel. And so that's one of the reasons why we have it. But that's the thing is, it sounds like, okay, so this is a bad thing, right? Science just gave it to us, and then marketers just use it for us, and now we're divided, and that's not good at all. I mean, we should all like the same sports team. Good luck. But if that's what your goal is, if we all like the same things, that'd be nice. But I actually think that we were designed to work in teams. The next slide I'm showing you is actually about your body. Because you as an individual are not just one person, you have millions of other living organisms inside of you. As an individual, you are still a team. I'm going to say that one more time. As an individual, you are still a team. You have so many bacteria in their body that it makes up about 1 to 3% of your body weight. Now, I don't know if you guys know how heavy a bacteria is, but it's not. And if 1 to 3% of your body weight is bacteria, if you're 200 pounds, that's up to 6 pounds of bacteria that live inside your body, have their own DNA, do their own function, and are required for you to live, and you're required for them to live. So you are built to be a team. You are your own tribe just by being yourself. And so this is one of the reasons why I actually think we were built for this. And so now I'm going to go into the next angle. So we had the biological, and now I'm going to jump into the biblical. Okay, so I'm going to start in Genesis 2:18. The Lord God said, "It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." Before we dive into the context of this, I mean, the general idea, right? It's Adam, and the God says, oh, this isn't good, he's by himself. I want to key into those words, not good. The significance of the words not good in Genesis 2 is that this comes after God calling everything else good. The man who made mosquitoes said that they were good and that being by yourself is not good. So just let that sink in a little bit. This is bad, okay? So man's by himself and this is not good. This is the first time we've encountered not good. We don't know what to do about it. So God goes ahead and he fixes it. He makes a helper, and that's Genesis 2:18. And we know that helper to be Eve. And there's a lot of ways you can go into that. I think that whole passage is super enlightening because, as I'm going to elaborate on in a little bit, essentially, the Bible is not necessarily just made for it to be a big story you read or a fun bedtime thing for the kids or just a thing about how your ethics should work in your life, but it's actually made to be meditated upon. The words that are used there have significance because the writers were very smart about what they were doing, trying to imply different things. And so I'm going to use that when going into this next point. So this is a verse that I think has been taken out of context more times than I can count, and I definitely was grown up with the wrong perception of this. No offense, Mom and Dad, it wasn't you guys, I promise. I'm glad they came out, by the way. Okay, Genesis 1:26, and this is the English Standard Version. God said, "Let us make man in our image after our likeness, and then let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." The creeping things that creep, not the other creeping things that don't creep. When I hear God made my image, when I was a kid, people were like, so God looks like you. I'm like, he's a handsome devil, but he also looks like apparently everybody else. So what does that really mean? And it was a bit confusing. And some people would say, well, it means morals because we have morals and image in God and morals. There. They do the little mental gymnastics and morals. Yeah. Okay, and I don't want to discount that completely. I mean, there is still some truth to that. I mean, that's part of God's likeness. But the word image back then didn't mean what we think it means now. You didn't have exactly a lot of pictures at the time. I'm not going to be a boomer and talk about, oh, your TikTok wasn't, no, okay, whatever. You understand that. But there wasn't a lot of pictures at the time because that's not how people operated. It wasn't the same kind of society we live in where we see images constantly. The word image meant something very different. So I want to go to Strong's Bible Dictionary, if you want to pull up that slide. Yeah. And this is the word that's been used. It's tselem. It's from an unused root meaning to shade, a phantom. This word is specifically the word that's used to mean image. An illusion, resemblance, hence a representative figure, especially an idol. I love the word especially. It kind of tells you what you're supposed to be looking at. Especially an idol. And then it says image or vain shoe. A vain shoe, don't even worry about that. That's an old thing that nobody uses anymore. It means a vain show, like something that means nothing. So yeah, that word means nothing. We're going to ignore it. The reason I want to key in on idol is because unless in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, you are seeing the words image of God, the word image only otherwise refers to idols. What is that supposed to imply then? That we are idols, but idols are fake and we're real, and I don't understand. But that's the thing. We are idols of the living God. non-living gods, non-real gods, have non-living idols. The living God, the true God, has living idols. And so if that doesn't make sense to you first, what's an idol supposed to do? An idol is supposed to represent the god or the king of the land. So if you had a king that had his own idol, that meant that he had an idol set up to say, hey, I'm the king, so you guys are going to worship that because I'm not going to go around to your houses all day. I got things to do, kingly business. You're going to stay here and look at that picture of me, and you're going to worship it and give it money, and I'll come back and I'll grab it or send somebody else because I'm busy. And the point is that in a sense, when we don't have a physical God to see, it's actually nice to be able to have idols that can represent him. But that requires something on our end. It actually comes with responsibility. You know, with great idolship comes great responsibility. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. One person. Okay, yeah, no. Okay. And the reason I can go off of that is actually to go back one slide. I want to show you guys here. At the end of this verse, we have a command right after that. He's made in the image. Great. Now what? Okay, let him have dominion over the fish in the sea and the birds of the heavens and the livestock and the creepy things that creep. Okay, the point of that is God instantly follows us up with, you're an image, and this is what that means. You're now in charge. Have fun. Now, we don't necessarily know why God likes to put other people in charge, but we know that he actually will have his angels rule over things for us. That's something called the divine council. Read into it if you're feeling extra biblical today. But also, we know that he's then put us in charge. That verse states it clearly. We have a job to do on this earth to represent God. Okay, we're going to move past that one and to our next verse. This is another verse that I also think is taken out of context a lot, but again, really relevant. So, Exodus 27. I have two different translations because I want to show you maybe some of these ones you've read. First one, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord God will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. The other version, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. So you have different versions of this, and a lot of the ways this has been interpreted to me for my entire life has been, that means you can't say, oh my blank. I'm about to blow all your minds. God is not his name in the same way that your dad's name isn't dad. He has a name, guys. And I bet you've heard it in some worship songs. If they say, oh, Yahweh, we love him. That's his name. His name isn't God. That's his title. In the same way that your dad has a name, that's not dad. Hi, Dad. I know your real name, but I'm not going to dox you like that right now. He's a professor here. There's some harsh feelings in the room. No, I'm just kidding. So, when it comes to this verse, again, we have another similarity to the first one. One, it's a verse that I wanted to share because I don't think it's been interpreted well throughout how it goes. And I'm going to actually show you why I don't think it's interpreted well, because it's actually used again. If you're saying, well, take and misuse, maybe it does mean that, you know? And if I feel convicted about saying, oh my blank, then why would I say that? And I'm not going to make you say that. But I want to go on and show you the word. Now, it looks like you're looking at a logo, but you're looking at a special Hebrew word. That word is nasah. The reason I use this colorful imagery is because the word nasah is one of the easiest Hebrew words. If you want to memorize one Hebrew word, make it this one. Number one, we already associate with something, but it means to lift up, like a rocket. They made it easy for us, everybody. If you go home and you can't remember what nasah means, I'm going to be disappointed. And my dad, who's a professor, will know. So we're going to move on to another use of the word nasah. Ooh, I went too far. Here we go. In Exodus 28:29, we see the word nasah again. Whenever Aaron enters the holy place, he will bear the names of the sons of Israel over his heart on the breastpiece of decision as a continuing memorial before the Lord. So Aaron is the high priest. What we just saw a little bit ago was the 10 Commandments. That's usually what people consider to be the moral code. And so we have the priest who represents that. Whenever he goes into the Holy of Holies to talk to God, he lifts up, he nasahs the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. That way, in the same way that not every single tribe has to come in and talk with God, you can have one guy do it. He goes in and he represents, kind of like what an idol would do. Interesting. It's all connected. So the reason that the biblical authors use that word, I think, is to hone in the point that we have been made with a purpose, that we aren't supposed to misuse this name, not by saying it. I mean, there is a truth to the fact that names can be misused in the language that you use, and you should treat them with respect. But I read this, especially that, as it's saying there is an importance to the fact that you have all been chosen to represent our God, the real living God. Okay? And so that's a very serious implication. You have been put on his team. Going back earlier, you're on his tribe. No matter what, you're born into it. You were made that way. And so the way that you act is going to represent him. And you need to be conscious of that. If you're somebody who believes in God and wants him to have a good rep, if you're somebody who wants to further the kingdom of heaven, be aware that you have been tasked with that already, and that you just living your daily life and going about what you're doing, being kind to people or being rude to people, is going to represent the kingdom of God. And so be specific about your image. Be specific about what you are going to do, because other people will come by and they will look at you and they will use the same kind of psychology ingrained in them. They'll say, he is on that team, therefore X, Y, Z. If you identify yourself as a Christian, they're going to see everything you do as that. So then be perfect, right? Easy. I don't think so. However, I want to mention that that is the strain behind being Christ-like. The reason you want to be that is because you are already in a situation when you are representing God. And even those who do not believe are still representing God in certain ways, in the way that they're behaving. So if you want the kingdom of God to have a good rep and for people to join it, then you have to represent it in a way that God would want you to, because it's your responsibility. So now I'm going to go actually, this is a picture really quick I want to show you. This is a partnership. So a lot of us see God sometimes as being a father or being a teacher, but sometimes the Bible makes it clear that he's actually supposed to be our partner. Whenever he went through the Bible and made these covenants with people, there's 4 big ones in the Bible. If you take in any Old Testament class, you probably had to memorize these. If you haven't, take a picture. It'll help, I hope. And they're very important because it's when God came down and said, I'm going to make a deal with you. I'm going to ask this of you, and I'm going to give you this in return. With Noah, he didn't ask for anything in return. He said, I'm not going to flood the earth anymore, I promise. But then when we have the other 3 covenants there, thank you for bringing that back up, I appreciate you, it's like you knew. With Abraham, he promises that he will extend his nations. They will multiply like the stars in the sky or like the sands on the beaches. But he asks for him to stay faithful and to leave his home. Not necessarily an easy thing to do. Same thing, Israel, he comes down, he gives them the 10 commandments, the law, and he's told them to live by that law and they will prosper. And constantly, if you've looked in the Old Testament for a total of 2 seconds, you know that they did not do that. Constantly, they had the law and chose not to. They had the responsibility to represent God, and they said, no thanks, goodbye. And that's not how it's supposed to be. And we saw that cycle of the things that were brought upon them from not wanting to represent God. Okay, and that's the covenants. I wanted to mention that because I think it's important that God works with us. But now we're going to go to the theatrical side. Unfortunately, according to my list here, I was supposed to, for writing a good sermon, I was supposed to have everything start with the same letter, and I was doing great. I was doing biological, and I did biblical. But we're having an issue here, so just bear with me, everybody, and just accept my substitution there. Okay. I want to start with something that I was actually taught in a theater class. In case you guys have ever not had the privilege of being in a theater class, and you're like, that must be fun. It's the class where you sit around and do nothing all day, or you read your little lines and you play pretend. Sometimes it's about being emotionally vulnerable. So it's a little bit more than what it sounds like. But the first thing that not the first thing, but one of the most important takeaways I've got from my theater professors was this quote that I put up, which says, you play your role as yourself. If you get cast in a part, it's not because they want you to go mimic somebody else. You have to play the role as you are, because the director saw you and said, I want him to play this role, I want her to play this role, not her to pretend to be someone else playing the role. You play it as you are. So I'm going to give an example of that. Have you guys ever seen Wizard of Oz? You know this lady right here? Okay, so that's Judy Garland, and she's very famous for playing this role. And so if you were to do a production of Wizard of Oz and you cast somebody and said, I want you to pretend to be Judy Garland, it's like, okay, what? Am I pretending to be Judy Garland, or am I pretending to be Dorothy, the main character? And so for somebody like my girlfriend Sydney, who's played this role many times, let me cross off mention significant other. Or, the subnote, if you're single, mention how lovely a season of singleness is and what a gift it is to have. I'm sorry, that does not apply to me. I'm sorry. We're going to move on. my point is, when you are going to play Dorothy, all of you at some point, you are cast because something about you draws this character. Not something about you looks like Judy Garland and that's enough. It's something about you can play this character. And so God didn't choose you because he wants you to pretend to be somebody else. He's not like okay, you're a great guy, Eddie. I want you to pretend to be Billy Graham because he was a great guy, right? So he represented me, you just be like him. The only person we look after is Jesus. But in our own way, we were made individually because God wasn't surprised about that. He would have just made us all clones of Jesus if he was like, well, that's the only way you can do it, guys. You're all just Jesus now. Did it. I won. Everyone loves me. Because that's not what he wanted. He wanted people with unique ways of representing him to choose to represent him. So we're going to move on to the next little area. And this is something else that I learned in a directing class during COVID. If you want to know how hard it is to do a directing class during COVID where you can't actually act or be in the same room with any other people, it's hard. I didn't like it. But I still took the opportunity to learn some important things. One of the things I learned was the absence of a choice is still a choice. So if you're setting up a scene as a director, your goal is to tell a story to the audience. You want to tell them about whatever it is the play is about. You're trying to get across a theme, a character's point, and you use that with the way that the actors act, the way the set looks, the way the music plays, and the lighting looks. You have a lot of those things there. So if you begin to omit those things out of laziness, people will start to think it's on purpose. For example, if you don't turn the lights on, people will think it was on purpose or that you're dumb. I'm going to hope that it was because they will think that you're on purpose. When you don't make a choice, you think, well, I don't think it really matters if the character walks right now. If you just stand still, just do whatever you want. Then people will go, oh, so it's a naturalist style. They all just walk whenever they want to. Interesting. People will still be looking for ways to interpret what's going on. The way this applies into our real life is, if you think that it's not your job to make choices on how you represent God, then you're wrong. Because you will always be representing him, and even if you think you're not choosing to, you will be doing it. Because you've already identified yourself, unfortunately. People, because of how we are made, will make judgments about you, and if you identify yourself a certain way, they will begin to take those judgments and infer them onto whatever tribe you're a part of. And so by thinking like, well, whatever, that's a lot of pressure, that's a lot of stress, I'm not going to worry about representing God because I don't want to do that, then you are actually undertaking a choice to do that. And there's people who make that choice in the Bible and things don't end well for them. This is not one that this is a passage I want to share that's, I don't think, misinterpreted, but I don't know if it's taken with enough gravity as I think it ought to. So go ahead and show it up there. So this is the story of the goats and the sheep. I'm going to read the beginning of it for you. It's kind of long, so I'll just tell you the gist of it. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. So when it comes down to it, no matter what teams and tribes you've associated with yourself, the things you like, the things you dislike, the way you are, the people you hang out with, your career, your hobbies, you will end up, according to this passage, on one of two teams. You're either a sheep or a goat. And maybe none of those sound fun because you like being a human. I understand. It's an allegory. So we're going to dive into that. The rest of that passage, which I'm not going to read to you because it's a bit long, you probably heard it before, but maybe you haven't, so I'm going to explain it. The sheep basically cry out and they say, hey, we would love to go with you to heaven because, we took care of you. And Jesus says, yes. Whenever I needed clothes, you gave me clothes. Whenever I needed food, you gave me food. Whenever I needed shelter, you gave me shelter. Appreciate it. And the goats go, hold on, problem. When did we see you naked and didn't give you clothes? And when did we see you hungry and we didn't give you food? I mean, if you were hungry, we would have given you food, of course. And if you didn't have a home, I totally would let you in. We have like a guest room. It's got a TV. That's not what he means, though, because Jesus goes on to say, actually, every time you didn't do that for somebody else, you didn't do it for me. The absence of that choice, the fact that you didn't choose to go ahead and make other people's lives good and help out people who needed you to help, that means you chose something. It means you chose to be apart from me. And then he casts them off. It's very descriptive. They don't end up well. He doesn't say, and then they were forgiven because they felt really bad. No, he says, you call out my name? Cool, good for you. You call out my name. You know who I am. Awesome. Now you're going to eternal punishment. I bring up this verse not just to scare you and make you think, and that's where all of you are going because that one bad thing you did today, but rather because I want you to understand that you can't take a passive stance in this. There's no way for you to now know that you represent God and to say, oh well, because you not choosing it means the absence of a choice is still a choice. You are choosing to not represent now. Okay. We're going to go on the next slide. So this is a picture it's actually a painting of the sheep and the goats, just to illustrate that point. And this is the ending there. I want to just read you to the end. They will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. So I'm not making that part up. Okay. And that is where I want to end it for you guys today. I want you guys to sit with just that notion that we are called to represent God. That if he wanted to do it on his own, he could have. But when you have the option to be kind to people, and to make their lives better, and to do things for them that other people can't, when you can make their lives better, you are spreading the kingdom of God. When you are acting in the way that Christ did to the people around him, you are representing God. And that is your one job. It's the one thing that I believe we were all called to do. Based on everything I've read here, I really feel strongly that we all need to make that conscious effort every day. Even if you don't think that, even if you think that something small, like just being rude to somebody in one moment isn't going to matter, that's a chance you just missed to represent God. That's a choice you made to not choose. So go forward today and tomorrow and this week and through spring break, even when you're not at school, surrounded by all your Christian professors, who are going to be Bible thumping you around, make sure that you still choose to represent God. Because even if you're not a Christian, why wouldn't you want the world to be a better place?